Sometimes it feels like all the forces of hell are conspiring against you, especially when you fly. When I was 11 years old, my grandparents decided to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary in Hawaii by taking the whole family, all 30 of us, for 3 weeks to the island of Oahu during Christmas break. It was 1969 and we were living in Calgary, Alberta, Canada at the time. This particular winter was no different than any other. It was 30 degrees below zero as we walked across the tarmac to board the airplane at Calgary International Airport. If you inhaled too deeply, your nostrils would freeze together. Spit would freeze before it hit the ground in a crackle. There were no enclosed jet bridges at the time, no computers or barcodes. All luggage had paper tags with the code for the destination airport stamped on them. Lost luggage was almost a guarantee. Our first leg took us to Seattle, where we hooked up with the rest of the family. We had a relatively long layover and were treated to a tour of the Boeing plant at Payne Field. We got a special preview of Boeing's latest aircraft, which was soon to go into service. It was the Boeing 747. I was 12 years old and just dumbstruck. The sheer size and modern design. It looked like something from the future and was absolutely gorgeous. I fell in love with the airplane at that moment, and ever since then, it has been my favorite commercial aircraft. So when I heard that United Airlines was about to retire their entire fleet of 747s, I booked us 2 tickets on the last international flight from Seoul, Korea to San Francisco. Although many passengers who were flying on this last leg had booked seats to Seoul just to turn around and get on the last flight back home, we decided to spend 7 nights in Vietnam and take advantage of being in Asia. On the return flight from Vietnam to Seoul, we arranged for a 12-hour layover at the airport to give us plenty of time to board this final flight. Apparently, the travel gods had different plans for us. Things started to unravel the day before our departure from Medford. Typically, I check in online as soon as I can, which is 24 hours before the flight departs. But for whatever reason, I didn't check us in until after work, later that evening around 6 or 7 p.m. It was then that I felt like I got punched in the face. We didn't have the required visas to enter Vietnam, and therefore would not be able to board the flight from San Francisco to Seoul. I was immediately thrown into panic mode. I frantically called our travel agent, who got on the horn to Hanoi. Fortunately, it was midday in Vietnam, and for a price, there was an expedited service available that could get us visas that would be available upon arrival in Da Nang. We emailed back and forth all night the necessary paperwork, and after a tense 5-hour wait, we had our visas at about 2 a.m. We printed them off, but they still required a passport-sized photo attached to the front. It was now 2 a.m. and we only had 2 hours away before we had to head to the airport. I had to figure out how to get 2 passport photos in the middle of the night in Medford, Oregon. Fortunately, I had a color photo printer at home and some 5x7 photo paper. After considerable effort of cropping and messing around with the printer settings, I was finally able to print what appeared to be acceptable passport photos, correct size and proportions. Our facial expressions, however, looked like we had just been raised from the dead. Just in time, our taxi for the airport was waiting for us at the front door. Check-in at the Medford airport was a breeze and our paperwork was accepted. A huge sigh of relief. But now the next hurdle was leaving Medford on time. SkyWest had an abysmal record of late or canceled flights out of Medford. Once in the air, however, I could sense we might make it. But I still wasn't totally convinced that our last-minute visas would be acceptable and allow us and allow us to board the flight to Seoul. The gate agent and SFO didn't say a word, and we boarded the 747 headed for Seoul. We had business class seats on the upper level and were soon treated to a glass of champagne and some warm nuts. We nestled into our seats with blankets and pillows, gave them our dinner selection, and set up our little cubicles for the 11-hour flight. Once in the air, a huge sigh of relief. There were no delays, and soon we were airborne, heading northwest towards Korea. An hour into the flight, however, the dreaded "This is your captain speaking" came across the intercom. He then proceeded to explain to us that we had had a bird strike which had resulted in the loss of all the avionics except for one system, and therefore had no backup systems to cross the Pacific Ocean. They decided to dump 200,000 pounds of fuel over Napa Valley and then return to San Francisco. There would be another 747 waiting for us. However, it would take 2 hours to dump all the fuel. If they tried to land the plane full of fuel, the plane would never fly again just from the damage of the weight. So after another 2 hours of circling Napa and dumping fuel, we finally landed back at the SFO International Airport. And true to their word, there was another 747 waiting for us at the next gate. We proceeded to change planes, but now there was another delay with finding a fresh crew. We eventually left after another hour and proceeded on to Seoul. We are now 4 to 5 hours behind schedule, and clearly we're not going to make our connection in Seoul. While in flight, United was able to find us the last 2 seats to Da Nang on Jeju Airlines, which everybody is familiar with by now, but would be the following morning, so we'd have to spend the night at a hotel at the airport. We were able to make our connection the following morning. The flight was absolutely packed, not a single empty seat. Apparently, Vietnam is a winter vacation spot for Koreans, kind of like Hawaii is to North Americans. It's also a very popular spot to get married for Koreans. There are places that hit you like a memory you've never had. Da Nang, Vietnam, hot, humming, serene, and savage all at once. You come here expecting beaches, you leave with something more. Fragments of flavor, of faces, of fire, and if you're lucky, a little peace. Clearing customs in Vietnam wasn't complicated, but it wasn't exactly warm and fuzzy either. There's a quiet efficiency to it, no smiles, no small talk. You just show your papers, you wait, sweat, and then just like that, you're in. The air smells like wet pavement and diesel and some distant sizzling pork. Welcome to Vietnam. Now let's not pretend this is how most people experience Vietnam. The Four Seasons in Da Nang is opulence dipped in jasmine and wrapped in silk. 3 separate villas and a private pool make our residence for the week. Ocean is just steps away. A staff that makes you feel like a lost king returned home. It is a bit much, probably, but I don't feel guilty, not in the slightest. Breakfast here isn't breakfast. It's a small declaration of war against mediocrity. Pho with brisket that's been simmering since before sunrise. Mangoes so ripe they melt. Vietnamese iced coffee, the kind that could resurrect the dead. It's almost too much to take in. It was the highlight of the trip, this morning breakfast. The beaches in Da Nang are famous and a contradiction. Wide, white, postcard perfect, and yet alive. You see fishermen here, old women gathering clams, children racing waves like it's a national sport. It's not a backdrop, it's a heartbeat. You don't come here just to relax, you come here to remember what silence sounds like. Hoi An is a fever dream of lanterns, alleys, and stories. A place where the past hasn't just survived, it thrives. Cooking classes are often sanitized, tourist-safe experiences. Not this one. We spent the day in the market gathering our ingredients. This was messy, loud, and slightly dangerous, just the way food should be. There's magic in Vietnamese food. layers of balance, brightness, bitterness, and soul. Dinner in Hoi An is the sound of chopsticks tapping porcelain, of old lovers laughing, of children chasing fireflies. It's not the price tag, it's the story. And this one, the story tastes like heaven. The spa at the Four Seasons is not to be missed. It might be the most beautiful spa I have ever been to anywhere in the world. There's something about being scrubbed, oiled, and pounded into oblivion by hands that seem to know your sins. The spa here is less pampering, more exorcism. I feel like I've just been baptized into something I'll never understand, and that's okay. Da Nang doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't dazzle, it hums. And if you listen, if you really listen, it tells you something honest about who you are. Our flight from Da Nang back to Seoul was uneventful.
A tail as tall as a 6-story building. A wingspan stretching longer than the Wright brothers' first flight. The first airplane with 2 aisles running through the cabin. A plane so innovative, it would forever change the way the world flies. The year, 1965. With air travel on the upswing, airlines struggle to handle the increasing number of passengers with relatively small aircraft. Juan Trippe, founder of Pan American World Airways, tells Boeing that he needs an airplane that accommodates twice as many passengers as the enormously popular Boeing 707. The proposed jetliner's design is so revolutionary that it requires special production facilities. So, in 1966, the company begins constructing one of the largest buildings in the world in Everett, Washington. Boeing chief engineer Joe Sutter is asked to lead development of the 747 program. His assignment? Build the world's first wide-body airplane for both passengers and freight. The jumbo aircraft would carry more than 400 passengers, twice as many as the 707, and have a distinctive hump, allowing extremely tall or long freight to be loaded through a unique nose cargo door. Together, some 50,000 Boeing employees make aviation history, building the 747-100 in less than 28 months. On February 9, 1969, the Queen of the Skies takes flight for the first time, entering service 11 months later, launching Pan Am's New York to London route. The 747 has changed a lot over the years. The 747-200 entered service in 1971 with more powerful engines and increased payload. The Dash 300 featured a long upper deck to carry more passengers. And the 747-400 incorporated winglets and advanced avionics to deliver greater range, lower noise, and better fuel economy. And today's high-capacity 747-8 offers airlines the lowest operating costs and best economics of any large passenger or freighter in its class. In the past 50 years, the 747 has hauled nearly the equivalent of the world's population. It's ferried space shuttles across the United States. It's appeared on postage stamps across the globe. Been the aircraft of every U.S. president since Ronald Reagan. And it's even starred in movies. Thanks to the support of our Boeing 747 customers over the past half-century, the Queen of the Skies continues to be built today. Opening doors, inspiring explorers, connecting the world still, after 50 years, like nothing else in the air.
After nearly 5 decades of loyal service, the end has finally come. Today, we are flying on United's last ever Boeing 747 flight, the final commercial journey of the legendary aircraft. From Seoul to San Francisco, one last time aboard the Queen of the Skies. After our 12-hour layover, we head from the lounge to the gate where there are news crews, banners, and Sam Chui interviewing the pilots. If you're not familiar with Sam, he has an amazing channel, aviation channel, which pretty much covers every single aircraft ever built. Today is just not another flight. Today is history. We'll be flying the final leg of United's 747 operation in true style on the upper deck of business class with fellow aviation lovers. You could feel the emotion in the air. Not your average business travelers today. Every single person here is either an aviation geek, a frequent flyer with deep nostalgia, or someone lucky enough to be part of history. I've never seen this much passion for a single flight. It's like a flying museum with 374 curators on board. Here she is, November 118 Uniform Alpha, United's last operating plane, 747-400. A symbol of a golden era of travel. Boarding her feels like stepping onto a cruise ship of the skies. In fact, it was a 747 pilot, retired, who taught me how to fly the Bonanza, a United pilot. We headed up the spiral staircase to business class upper deck, my favorite place on any airplane. This is where the magic is, tucked away above the main deck. The upper deck on the 747 always felt like a secret club. And today it's a reunion. Look at this, a special farewell menu and a commemorative plaque. Every detail is a nod to the Queen's final bow. Everyone here is documenting everything. Some are crying, some are cheering, some are just quiet, soaking it in. The cockpit crew has flown this aircraft for decades. And for the captain, this is his farewell flight and retirement. The flight isn't just a job, it's a send-off, a tribute. As we descend into San Francisco, the Queen glides like she always has, gracefully, effortlessly, one last landing, one final memory. Every one of us was clapping, not for the landing, but for the legacy. And there it is, the farewell salute, water cannons, a royal send-off for aviation royalty.
Thanks for coming. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
No one wanted to leave. You don't just step off 747, you disembark from a legacy. This is the end of an era. For many of us, the 747 wasn't just a plane, it was the dream of travel itself, ever since I was 12 years old. Wide body, upper deck, 4 engines, endless possibility. Goodbye, Queen of the Skies. You changed the world, you made it smaller, more accessible, more beautiful, and you will be missed. Thanks for coming along on this unforgettable journey. If you enjoyed this flight back in time, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your 747 memories in the comments. And then until next time, happy flying.